Welcome. In front of me is a Motorola Moto G32, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview of this phone. So anyway, let's just get straight into it, not wasting any time. Just paperwork in here. We get a 33-watt charger, so that's pretty nice. And a Type A to Type C charging cable. And a case that is pre-applied on your device. Just peel that sucker off. There we go, yoink. And turn it on. Now, before I start talking about the specs of this device, I'm just gonna start off with the price tag. So this device comes at about $150. So it is basically a budget approaching, I guess, mid-range, though I would consider mid-range starting from like 200. So it's halfway there. So obviously this device is pretty budget. And the specs of it, from the first glance, seems to be pretty okay for what you get to pay. So, number one will be the display, which is a 6.5-inch 1080p by 2400 display. It's an IPS LCD display with a 90 Hz refresh rate. So they didn't skimp out, at least on the refresh rate right here. And also the resolution is pretty decent as well, being the typical standard resolution for majority of the devices, no matter the price range, minus like the top best phones, like for instance S23 Ultra, which will have a higher resolution and also higher refresh rate. Now it also boasts an 85.5% screen to body ratio with 405 pixels per inch. That's due to the resolution and also the smaller display size. Now it's running Android 12, so it's already a little bit outdated, but it has an update to Android 13. Right now we are on Android 14, but this device did come out in July 2022, so it is out for already some time. Now, let's flip over to the cameras. So at the back we have normally I would call this triple camera setup, but in reality this is more like a dual camera setup. So the main sensor will be the 50 megapixel wide sensor, and then we got an 8 megapixel ultra wide. And then we got this tiny little garbage shit camera as the 2 megapixel macro / depth camera. Obviously absolutely useless, and you can literally take a marker, smudge it up, and you won't really see any difference in your photos. And at the front, in this hole punch, we have a 16 megapixel wide sensor. Now that allows you to shoot 1080p 30 frames with the front or back in terms of video. And for this price range, it is what you would expect. Now, moving on into the internals, we have a 5000 mAh battery that is powering the Snapdragon 680. It's a 4G chipset, so you're not getting any 5G connectivity right here. We have two versions of 6 or 4 gigabytes of RAM. And we also have 64 gigs of storage at the very base, up to 128 gigs of storage at the highest. And obviously 64 has the lowest amount of RAM with 4, 128 4 or 6. So there we go. Now I'm gonna check one more thing if we have expandable storage in here. It is a budget device, so it would lead me to believe that we might have expandable storage. And we do. So you can go for the 64 if you want to and pop in an SD card, and obviously have up to probably like a half a terabyte of storage in addition to the 64. So that is pretty nice. And honestly, that's almost it. I'm gonna just mention a couple additional things. So we do have a fingerprint sensor that doubles as a power button. We do have a headphone jack at the bottom, speaker grills, and at the top we just have a microphone, volume rockers, and absolutely nothing. And that's all there is up to this device. It is a pretty budget device that did focus on the aesthetics, I would argue. It looks pretty nice. This looks like a plastic back. We do have also plastic frame. So again, budget cutting everywhere where they can. They did give us a pretty decent display right here, arguably for the price. It might not be competing with like the mid-range devices which boast, for instance, 120 Hz refresh rate, but let's be honest, this device costs less than the refresh rate of the other devices has. So 100 and like, actually no, a little bit more, 150 50 bucks. So yeah, still 90 Hz is still better than 60, and we have that right here with a pretty decent resolution, and also most likely a pretty decent brightness as well. Obviously won't be winning any kind of like awards there. It's not gonna compete with things like the iPhones that boast nearly 2000 nits brightness, but judging by right now, it's probably gonna perform give us like about 1000 nits, so that's pretty good for phone at this price range. So yeah, so anyway, with that being said, it's a pretty decent stock Android device that has a decent price, at least in the budget range, and offers also good specs for the price, giving you a Snapdragon 680, a decent amount of RAM. If you go for the higher one, I would probably recommend going for the 6 GB of RAM. Also expandable storage, a really decent battery, 5000 for size like this, that's pretty good. And obviously the only thing that here that we get to, well, we save up on is the build quality is a little bit on the lower side, as a plastic back, plastic frame, and the cameras. So yeah, the cameras are also, at least the depth sensor, 8 megapixel ultra wide, they seem a little bit low. It is a standard, I'm gonna just kind of mention standard, or something that you'd come to expect at a device at this price range, but I argue that I don't think most of the cost, 150, went into the display. So I guess, actually thinking about it right now, most of the cost went into screen and processor, being a Snapdragon 8 or 680. So basically the phone kind of skimps out on everything else to accommodate for these two relatively good things that you get in a device. The device should be fairly snappy and also look good as a display wise. So yeah, if you're looking for a fast device at this price range and also decent display, look no further. Now, with that being said, if you found this very helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.